Hey friends, welcome back to Believe in the Good. Today's episode is something really special to me and a little bit different. I'm actually sitting down with someone who's played such a meaningful role in my life. I'm talking to my therapist, Zoi. So I know that therapy can feel like this really big, intimidating word, but truly I just think therapy, I think it should be called life coaching. I think that it's just a place where you can be human, where you can tell them things and they can help guide you. And that's what Zoi has done for me in my life. And I'm so incredibly grateful for her. Today, we talk about mental health and we talk about what it is like to be mothers and deal with mom guilt. We talk about marriage. We talked about being single and hoping to find that forever spouse. And I think that it's something that you can definitely, if you've been in therapy for years or if it's something that you've just been curious about, I think that it's definitely a conversation that's going to resonate with your heart in some way. So here we go. Let's get into it. Welcome to Believe in the Good with Haley Dillon, the podcast where we go beyond the track and into the lives of NASCAR wives, families, and the incredible community that keeps this sport moving. Here, we're all about the stories that fuel us, the highs, the lows, the grit, the grace, and the goodness we find along the way. So buckle up because we're diving into real conversations, behind-the-scenes moments, and the kind of inspiration that reminds us, no matter what, there's always good to be found. So let's hit the gas and let's get into it. So Zoi, we have been working together now for, it's probably been like 5 years. And I came to you in a time of major turmoil in our lives, in our relationship. I think when people hear therapy, it's a very daunting thing. I think that people don't know how to, for one, I think people don't know how to approach it. So I want to ask you, what is the easiest way for someone to get into therapy? And then I think one of the other aspects that's really hard for people is getting into therapy just because of the expense of it. It seems like a frivolous thing, but I think a lot of people don't understand that there are so many things that they can do to get into therapy. So what would you say for someone that's even curious about it?
Correct. Well, when someone is experiencing emotional distress that is impacting self, behavior, and relationships, I think that's the time for them to seek therapy. As per the expense, some clinics like ours also is a nonprofit. Therefore, they have a scholarship rate. So we're willing to work with populations who cannot really afford to pay the full fee. In addition, insurances are now paying for therapy as well. So they will at least pay a portion. And the stigma, I think, of therapy has changed within the past 10 years. It's actually very cool to be going to therapy now. The reason I say that, I work sometimes with teenagers and they just love coming here. I know their friends are in therapy as well and they talk about it and they tell me, Miss Zoi, I'm processing my emotions. I'm making good choices. So I think that stigma has basically been removed. That was around several years ago.
Definitely. I think it's just a space that you can be human. And I think that for me, you've always just been a good sounding board and kept me on the right track. I think that you helped me not make the bad decision of speaking when I shouldn't, I think I get to talk to you, I get to talk through my emotions, and then I make better choices in my relationships. I think something that got me in trouble in the past with different relationship dynamics was speaking too soon on my emotions, and I think that that's something that's been the most beneficial thing for me is being able to work through my problems and my thoughts about different issues with different relationships with you before going ahead and making the decision to have a conversation that maybe isn't needed. Maybe it's just me being, too in my feelings about something, too emotional about something, I'm curious, what do you think is the most common reason people come to therapy and seek therapy?
Individuals are obviously experiencing some type of emotional dysregulation. There could be a crisis, a trauma. I think couples are presenting with communication issues. That's the biggest one. They're having communication issues. And then families come to us for either a divorce, a separation, and also a reunification. So there's different reasons. And what I've noticed is what a client comes in with initially, if they stay long enough and if they do their therapy, they take back much more than they ever thought they would get. The initial
Yeah.
quite often is not the real purpose of why they're in therapy, especially when we look at the journey, when we see their therapeutic journey and their healing.
Yes, and I also think it's important to find the therapist that works for you, right? I think don't settle on if that first therapist that you talk to isn't jiving with you, if you don't feel like you're getting the benefit. I mean, you can talk to a few until you find what you like, right? I mean, when Ty and I were first sort of in this mode of like, okay, we need to seek therapy because we were doing it in a time of trauma, like you say. And I remember we met with one guy. He kind of had like a method about it that he was seeking, he kind of had like this is almost a course. And we didn't like that. We didn't, that didn't feel like it was us. And then we seeked individual therapy for a little while. And I found a girl that I liked, but she was my age. And so I think then I felt, okay, I think I've almost graduated from this. I think I need more of like a mothering energy. And so we went again seeking couples therapy and we met with you. And it was just like, at that point, we had both done a little bit of individual therapy and we poured everything out to you in the first, we were like, okay, we got an hour. We're going to soak up this hour. And we like rapid fire through our whole life story at you so fast. And you just took it and were like, all right, you guys are in a safe space. You're going to be okay. We're going to work through this. Like you gave us so much hope in a time where we felt so hopeless. And so I think that something people need to understand is that maybe that first person isn't going to click, but don't give up on it, right?
Exactly. It has to be what we call in therapy a good fit. I've had clients come to me and I wasn't the right fit for them. I have other clients that I am the right fit. And in your case, you opted for the old gal. And there I was. Just getting old.
No, I loved that you like had a daughter around my age. You gave me, okay, this is what I need is sort of this mothering energy, and I didn't know it until I met with you. And I'm like, oh, that feels right, So it was a few different people and then it finally clicked. So
The right fit. And we say that to our clients too, especially when we meet during an intake and treatment plan initial session. We might not be the right fit. It's up to them to make a decision. Sometimes they come back, sometimes they don't. But that's okay because what matters is the client.
So when you sit down with a client for the first time, what is the first question you have for them?
Typically, our clients will fill out a history and I read through it and I welcome them, of course, and I say, please let me know what is bringing you here to therapy. If it's a couple, I ask each of them individually. And if it's a family, I want to hear from the entire family. And they will give me their perspective. I do ask, though, to speak from themselves, not to say, I'm coming here because, my spouse is doing this. Or I'm coming here because my friend told me I need to do this. I want to hear from the self.
Well, that's such a good point because I feel like so often we do speak for others or do things for others.
Correct.
Do you think that you find a lot of reluctance in couples where one or the other is not receptive to it?
Yes, we do that. One is much more eager to start the work and do the therapy, where the other one is more reluctant. And it's a little challenging sometimes because we might be less receptive to feedback. What I do in that regard, I just say, give this couples therapy a few sessions. If you find that it's not working for you or you're still not engaged in it, then we don't have to continue. But I just say, give us an option. Give us the opportunity for a few sessions.
Yeah, definitely. I think that sometimes too, some of the best sessions are the ones you walk in thinking, I don't really need to do this today almost, I've had this on the schedule and I don't really feel like I have anything going on. And sometimes those are the ones that you make the biggest breakthroughs, right?
And numerous times I found myself saying, and you thought we had nothing to discuss today, right? Like I say that to my clients who are like, this was a great session. I'm like, because I've been listening throughout your whole journey.
So true. So what do you think is the most common time of year that people seek therapy?
That's a good one. Thanksgiving until after Christmas. We have our waiting room out there, and there are some chairs there, but from a week prior to Thanksgiving, or maybe 2 weeks prior to Thanksgiving, all the way until after Christmas, it's standing room only while they're waiting to come in session. Because what's happening is individuals are going back to their family of origins, they're going back to their families, and quite often they have unresolved issues, so the emotions are very high.
How do you disassociate when you go to your own family functions? I mean, are you just constantly kind of like, are they like, oh, Zoe, I know you're a therapist, don't do a session where like, what is your family's thoughts and what are your thoughts? Like, how do you disassociate from your work?
Hard time because I was working as a therapist and I'm like, if there's a family problem, I'm here to help everyone. And then I realized I was getting a bit burnt out and overwhelmed. And I will help family, but it's much, much shorter. And then I refer them elsewhere. I remember when my daughter was in high school, our middle daughter, she had some issues with her friends. She's like, Mom, can we do a therapeutic sessions with me and my friends? And I said, no, but I'm referring you to my colleague and I'll pay for it.
Yeah.
So I do have boundaries right now. I have clearer boundaries where when I was younger, I didn't. When I was a newer clinician, I didn't. I was like, I'm here to help everyone and walk alongside their healing journey. But remember, family is different, client is different.
And it
Because
has to
family
just,
knows me as well. I play a role in the family as well, where, typically my clients, I know them, they don't know much about me.
right. And you're human. I mean, do you seek therapy outside of the sessions you do?
I've done therapy since I was 10 years old. I had witnessed my father having an injury, and then I developed a fear of him dying, him and my mother dying. And I thought I would be abandoned, like I had some separation anxiety. And my mother brought me to a therapist at that time. And my journey started from then. I've done numerous therapies, but I've stopped in the past. I think I haven't done any therapy within the past 10 years. Me and my husband have done some couples. We did family therapy, individual. But let me just say this. I was 10 years old, and that's when I kind of realized I like this. I'd go into her office, we would play. I'm of Greek descent from Montreal, Canada. She was Greek from Greece, and she was studying at one of the universities in Montreal. And we had such success. My parents realized what had happened and my fear of them dying and me being abandoned, that separation anxiety. So I thought to myself, I kind of like this. And as a result, I decided to go into this profession
I
as a
love that.
10-year-old.
I wanted to ask you, how did it begin and how did it spark the interest? And that's obviously too something that you benefited so much from, but you wanted to give back and continue on. That's very cool.
Correct. And in addition to that, Haley, I was good with my friends at school. They had problems. They would tell me their problems and I remember them telling me, you ask a lot of questions and you listen. So then at the age of 16, I was really, really sure about this. I said, I'm going to go to university and I'm going to study psychology and become a therapist. And I did that. And by the way, like I said, I'm from Montreal, Canada. I went to McGill University. And there's a very famous psychologist right now called Jordan Peterson.
Yes, I was going to say, you had told me that. That's so cool.
Right. He was at McGill as well, although he was 2 years older than me. So I am proud to say I went to the university that Jordan Peterson went to as well. And he's a brilliant psychologist and speaker.
He is. He's someone that we have gone down a rabbit hole and listened to so many of his different videos that you can find on YouTube. He's such an interesting man. And I love hearing his faith journey. So Ty and I really wanted to seek counseling, and we found Agape Christian Counseling through, at the time, Elevation Church. And I think that having a Bible-based or having a therapist that is very knowledgeable in your faith is really important. And I think for us, I think having that foundation, knowing that we could sort of bounce questions off of you was also really helpful. Because sometimes, do you think therapy can be dangerous in any situation? Like, do you think maybe the wrong therapist could be the wrong scenario for you or your family, your marriage, your children?
I mean, yes, that could happen. I may just say this about faith-based. We are faith-based here at Agape Christian Counseling, but we never turn anyone away. We have worked with clients who are not believers. We have worked with clients who come from different faiths. So, because we're all clinically trained, but as I said, we're faith-based here. I am not trained in a faith-based university. McGill was not a faith-based university. I did my postgraduate at the Argyle Institute of Human Relations in Montreal, Canada, but I am a Christian. So I'm incorporating my faith. That's what I do. And yes, sometimes, as in all professions, there could be some dangerous counselors out there who are not, or therapists who are not healthy themselves. Therefore, they're doing damage in the therapeutic setting. Absolutely.
Mhm. So it's definitely something you want to sort of vet out. I mean,
Exactly.
especially if you were seeking it for your child, right? Yeah.
Right. And what we usually do here, what I find with our clients who are seeking it for their children, they come in, they interview us, they have a conversation with us, and then we bring in their child. We want to make sure, that the parent is ready and willing to bring the child to work with us because their children are valuable.
Hmm. So, are there any tools or anything that you recommend to your clients outside of a session? Because obviously, so much of the work that we do on ourselves is outside of therapy, and we gain the tools and then we go home, we work on them. Is there any tools, apps, activities that you recommend to your clients to do outside of therapy?
Falls under the umbrella of self-care. A lot of self-care. Whatever the client deems as necessary for themselves, I encourage a closer relationship with God always in sessions. You're going to bring this to the Lord when something happens out of here. Of course, having a prayer life, having a church, community is very important. Relationships are very important. And then some of the fun stuff. You want to travel, you want to go to restaurants, exercising, and very important for your endorphins. So I encourage them to have a quality of life, a healthy life out there, as well as what we talk about in here. And what clients also do is that there's a part of, in therapy, they take a part of the therapist with them out into the world. Because I've had clients tell me, this happened. And I thought, well, what would Zoe say if I came back to session?
I say that all the time. My mom says that all the time. Well, what would Zoe tell you?
Bring
Anytime
it
I'm
to
talking to her. That's so true. Are you trained in EMDR or have you ever done that?
Actually, last year, the entire organization at Agape, we did a 1-week intensive on EMDR. We have training. We can do EMDR. At least I have training and I can do EMDR, but I'm not certified. I mean, I did get a piece of paper reading that you can do EMDR. So I'm able to do it as well, but I'm not certified like other individuals. It's not an avenue I'm going to pursue because that's not what I'm really interested in, but I've done some work with clients with EMDR.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on it? Do you think that it's
It actually,
real?
it,
I'm skeptical. I'm like, is this a real thing?
it is real. It is trauma-based. It has to be specific on a trauma. And it actually does work because what ends up happening is, I think what was her name? Francine Shapiro. She's the one who created it. She was walking in the park and all of a sudden she was thinking about a trauma and her eyes were shifting back and forth. And it's, I think, bilateral stimulation. What you do is you use your fingers or you can use some tapping. And as you're thinking about your trauma, your fingers are moving back and forth. The therapist's fingers are moving back and forth and you're following that. You close your eyes and then you say what thoughts come to mind. And I'll tell you why it works because I was skeptical at first. When we were training, it was last February, I believe we were in Italy. My granddaughter was born in Italy and my husband and myself did some traveling and we were doing a tour and I sat in the back of a minivan. And as soon as the driver was about to start the minivan, I said, stop, stop, stop. I can't take this. This is too, I feel very confined. So I ended up sitting in the front and then I kept having these thoughts of being trapped, feeling trapped. So I brought that to the EMDR session with a coworker that I was working when we were training. And I was able to go to that place and think about the trauma. And after the EMDR was done, I can now think about being traumatized and feeling trapped in my mind, and I'm not afraid anymore. And I can sit back in a minivan wherever I had a heart. Yeah. And it really does work. But
That is so interesting.
Specific.
That is so interesting. I have definitely heard about this so much, and I've had a couple girls on the podcast talk about it. And I want to try it. I mean, I don't necessarily know what for specifically, but I'm just always really curious about these different mental health, these different types of therapy. I'm just so curious to see if I would benefit from it,
But it's got to be specific, though, to a trauma.
Yeah. True. Which I mean, I could definitely dig some up.
Correct. Can't we all, right? And whatever ends up happening is then you're able to think about that specific trauma and that event, and it doesn't overwhelm you emotionally.
Right. I love that. What's one piece of advice that you give to your clients often that you also have to remind yourself of?
Let go of perfection. Good enough, regardless, is very important. Leave room for error, leave room for grace and leave room for forgiveness. I always have to tell my clients and remind myself of that too, because I have a tendency of wanting things to be done perfectly, dot your I's and cross your T's. Well, not nowadays because we're using computers and everything. But so I have to let my clients know, leave room for human error and humanity. We're only perfect in Christ, but as we're living here, we're not perfect yet.
That's such a good reminder. I think I've had a hard time myself lately with dealing with perfection, or just dealing with something I think I've been struggling with lately is giving others grace, maybe. Because I think, so doing this podcast has been interesting. I've loved doing it. I also have found it a little odd at times when I go to see these girls after I've done these podcasts with them. It's, for me, I think that there is this way that I can disassociate, or not disassociate, I can compartmentalize in a sense the fact that our husbands compete against each other every race weekend. But then seeing the girls, I can be friends with them, like I can kind of compartmentalize that. And I have noticed, and I mean, I am giving them grace, but I guess to me, I've been taking it more to heart, or I've been very sensitive about it, that when I do an interview with them, we'll be talking for like an hour and a half. And it's this amazing connection. And I'm like, wow, we're totally, clicking. And this is maybe someone that I haven't talked to a whole lot, and we're clicking, and it's been really fun. And then I'll go to see them at the track, and I get kind of like this very guarded girl again. And I'm like, we just had this lovely conversation. So I think I need to give them a little bit of grace. And I think I need to not be so sensitive about it, because, I think it's exactly just that they maybe can't compartmentalize they can't disassociate with the fact that, like, yes, our husbands race against each other and it's intense, but then, for me, I'm like, I want the community within it, the friendships and everything. So that's a good reminder, because it's been kind of a challenge for me with this podcast.
So you're saying, because what's happening is you are, of course, doing the podcast with them, great conversation, but then in the other world, they're not as engaged with you.
Yeah. I've had a couple moments where I'm and I mean, then on the flip side, there's also been new friendships out of it for sure. But I've had a couple moments where I've noticed, oh, she's really guarded with me. And I just talked to her for a while, and now she's seeming guarded. I need to concentrate and focus on the good relationships that have been the opposite, that have like blossomed because of it. But yeah, it's been unique. And I think it's something that I kind of have. I mean, Ty is probably about sick of hearing me like, babe, this was so weird. I don't know. It's something that for me, I want it to be a place where they feel loved and heard and have a platform. It's just kind of, it's sort of weird that I've been doing this. It sort of felt like higher than me, the need to do it. Like I kept telling you, I have this desire to do this podcast, to talk to these girls, to like give them the recognition that I feel like they deserve, because it's so often about our husbands. And I think it's been, in these last few weeks, it's been we're in the heart of the season. We're in these weird, there's these side brackets going on that's been really, really cool and really exciting, because Ty has still been in this in-season challenge, which has been really exciting. But yeah, it's just been this weird thing to have to navigate, for sure, in my relationships currently with these women.
Then sometimes you just have to meet some of the women where they're at. Some will want to be friends with you. Others will just keep it on the professional. They're part of your podcast and they're not going to continue. But I remember when we were talking, when you were discussing doing the podcast, and what do you remember my reaction? Yes, do it. Yes, do it. I'm like, I'm the biggest fan. And I think you're doing fantastically. Kayla, you're doing fantastic.
Oh gosh. Thank you. Yes, you were such a good encouragement for me, wanting to, encouraging me to go ahead and do it. And it's been really great. I mean, I have really enjoyed it, but I think with everything, there's maybe a moment where you need to take a breath and evaluate it. And I think for you and I, we were just talking about this last week, like sometimes when you're extending yourself too much, you need to take recognition of that, and maybe bring I said like extending the olive branch in a sense, but maybe sometimes too it's just like taking a breather, wait for them to come to you. But for the purpose of this, it's different. It is me reaching out and doing and carrying it on. But yeah, it's
But
been
in your daily life, like you said, you could extend the olive branch, but you have to wait for them as well.
It's been interesting for sure. You've been a lot of help in navigating some of my thoughts about it. But ultimately, I've been really grateful to do it.
You have done remarkable work, though, as well. You've stayed the course. Amazing work.
Thank you.
I've seen your evolution, and I think it's beautiful. We give glory to God first, and of course, then to you, and then a little bit myself in the back.
Right. Yes, thank you. You've definitely helped me stay on, the straight and narrow with it. Hey parents, are you looking for high quality, faith inspired pajamas for your little ones? Let me introduce you to Holy Pals, the brand that brings comfort, quality, and faith together in the sweetest way. Holy Pals creates soft, cozy pajamas featuring beautifully designed Bible stories and characters, making bedtime not just about rest, but also about faith and family. Whether it's Noah's Ark, David and Goliath, or the Nativity, these pajamas are a perfect way to spark meaningful conversation with your kids. And not only are they adorable, but Holy Pals is committed to quality. Each pair is made with 100% premium cotton, ensuring a safe and snug fit for your little ones. So why not make bedtime a little more special? Visit holypals.com/HaleyDillon for 20% off at checkout. Holy Pals, where faith and comfort come together, one bedtime story at a time. Okay, let's talk about marriage and fighting in marriage. And what is do you think it's healthy not to fight?
I guess, there might be some people who don't fight. I've never met them. But it probably exists. I guess, fighting, disagreeing, arguing, but not going below the belt, not causing, core damage to the relationship or to your spouse is okay. But with any type of arguments, you have to try to resolve. And one of the goals here in therapy, we teach our couples to have a quicker recovery so that they're able to, process, forgive, and let go much faster. Because if not, it lingers. But as I said, I've really never met anyone who doesn't really argue.
Right.
But healthy fighting, not though you don't want it to become too damaging to the relationship. And I often encourage my couples, if you're going to be fighting, do not bring up the word divorce.
That is such a valuable thing. And I think that's something Ty and I had mentioned, actually. We did a podcast, the two of us. So I think that is really encouraging that you do tell clients that, because throwing out, maybe we should get a divorce, that truly is just so damaging.
Correct. It creates a secondary issue. And, you might be arguing about something, then you're going to bring up divorce. It creates a secondary issue. It tears at the trust. Couples are working on a healthy attachment. It creates all different type of issues for, couples. So yeah, never bring up the word divorce unless there's a serious issue and you want to have a discussion about divorce.
Have you done premarital counseling? Do you do a lot of that?
I do. And with premarital counseling, there's an Enrich program. I think it's called Prepare and Enrich. I touch on that a bit, but my goal is to focus on attachment. Yes, we're going to talk about family of origin. We're going to talk about sex. We're going to talk about money. We're going to talk about children. We're going to talk about careers. But I try to focus on healthy attachment for a couple. And the reason why I say that, it is my understanding that we come into the world, we are attached to mama, right? There's a little bit of the umbilical cord gets snipped. Then we still have to attach to a parental figure. Usually it's the mother. If not, there are some children who are given up for adoption. They attach to another mother. We're there to bond and attach. And also we have a space internally that we attach to the Holy Spirit. Then what ends up happening once we meet someone, especially if you want to get, have a long-term relationship like a marriage, we have to formulate a healthy attachment. So that's what I basically focus on. And there's different types of attachment. There's secure, there's avoidant, there's anxious, and then there's disorganized. Typically, my couples are coming here with either anxious, avoidant, or disorganized attachment. And once we deal with their crisis, whatever it is, then I direct them to a way, let's focusing on healthy attachment to build a loving bond, lifelong connection with each other, where issues will arise, but they're not going to address them the same way that they do with I hate you, you hate me, I'm leaving, I don't want you. Like they're not going to go below the belt. Because when you're better attached, you're able to resolve much better because you've got that security of the bond.
Mm-hmm. What do you think mine and Ty's attachment style was when we first came to you.
At that point, you still have a good attachment, but at that point there was a crisis. So there was I think at that point it could have been a little bit more a combination of all, maybe some, anxious, there was avoidance and a little bit of disorganization as well.
I know it really was all three when you said them. I thought, I would be curious to see what she'd pinpoint, but I completely agree. I think we had a bit of all of it. And I do feel we have a healthy attachment now. And
I've said that to you for years. You do. Yeah. You did the
yeah,
work. You both did the work. And you have
absolutely.
also grown spiritually. It is my understanding there's been a lot of spiritual growth, your walk with God. And you're young. You're both quite young too. Yeah.
Ty and I, just last week, we had heard of a couple that was having some issues, and we were sad for them. And it just, it's not gossipy, it's heartbreaking. I think that when you hear it and you've grown in your own relationship and you hear they're having issues, it's so much more of a heartbreaking thing than it, I think obviously there are people that maybe have an unhealthy attachment and find joy in hearing things like that. But it made us think about it, and it made us think about what we've been through. And we feel like Ty was like, I feel like we were born again, and I'm so grateful. I feel like we had sort of that midlife crisis that people have, and maybe we still will one day, but we feel like we had that renewal, almost like a rebirth of our life, like we were completely reborn. And I mean, we were these sort of born again because we came to Jesus so we did have that renewal in our life. But yeah, it's been a completely different world since we seeked the Lord first and then therapy, realizing in our journey with Jesus that we do not know anything. We need to seek professional help. And that healthy attachment style, I mean, when we talk about people fighting, of course we fight, and we have a way of doing it healthy, that it's not below the belt. We have so much of that is a testament to going to therapy. I think having faith and having love and respect for each other, but I think going to therapy has taught us how to fight fair,
Correct. And you were willing to be vulnerable and transparent and say, you know what, and recommit to redirect your relationship in a healthy way. But there was a vulnerability and honesty, and you were both willing to do the hard work. And sometimes we find couples are not willing to do that, or maybe one of the spouses is and the other isn't, in the relationship doesn't really work.
So do you think that when that is the case, do you think that someone can one-sided fix a relationship?
Unfortunately not. We cannot fix relationships. What we do is we fix ourselves so that the relationship gets better. And that becomes an unhealthy relationship, basically, when one person's doing work and the other one is just kind of going along. And I do see that early on with my couples sometimes, where one has more of an investment in the therapeutic process or also in themselves. And the goal is to get the other one on board as well. Yeah, we never fix people. We fix self. Therefore, relationship changes.
That's such a good point. What do you think is the most challenging relationship dynamic for people?
The most challenging relationship dynamic, I think, probably if there's a lot of betrayal there. It violates the trust. It violates, obviously, the attachment. But I think the betrayal, especially when one of the spouses is not owning it, I guess the person who's doing the betrayal is not owning it, it creates a lot of challenge.
Yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
at that point, it's like, do you stay like this? Do you not stay together? And sometimes a lot of couples have a lot of investment in each other, and, they have families and everything. So that's the hard one, especially when we see resistance for the person who's betraying to take ownership.
Yeah, definitely. Outside of married couples, what do you think is the hardest relationship? Is it, parent to child? Is it siblings, in-laws?
Some of the challenges we do with parents and children, especially when you have a child, as we, in the Christian terms, we say a strong-willed child. Or in therapy, we might say a defiant child. We can see that happening there too. We also see a lot of issues, believe it or not, with family of origin, meaning in-laws, if there's not boundaries there. When a couple gets married, their parents are trying to be too involved in the individual's life and they're not allowing them to bond, expectations. So we have a lot of family of origin issues. This is why our office is very busy from November until after Christmas.
During the holidays.
That's right. It's all coming to the surface.
Yes, definitely. And it's refreshing too, because can you speak to that fact that everyone has family issues? No family is perfect.
Absolutely. No family. There's no such thing as perfection. It's good enough regardless. I have family issues. I have a 91-year-old mother who is very opinionated, controlling, and is always telling me what to do. I have these two cousins whom I love dearly. We're the only females in the family, and we fight, we disagree, we have opinions, but we love each other. So, and we've grown up that way. So yeah, every family has issues, but the key thing is to be able to forgive and stay connected through love.
So forgiveness is something that is obviously talked about so much in the Bible, but when Jesus talks about forgive, 70 times 7, what does that mean to you as far as forgiveness and yet protecting and having boundaries? But I think that something that people have a hard time with, and we did in the beginning, is what is forgiveness versus having I'm trying to think of how to put it. Where did trust and forgiveness come into play? Correct. You can forgive someone, but it doesn't mean you give them your trust again. I don't know.
So I'll bring something interesting. I remember when I was training at the Argyle Institute of Human Relations in Montreal, and it's a secular place. And I remember one of the professors telling us, fundamentally, she says, basically, therapy is going to involve a lot of forgiveness. You have to forgive those who have hurt you. And me being a Christian, I said, well, yeah, that's one of the messages of Christ. But you have to forgive those who have offended you, those who have hurt you. Not only so much for them, but for you to heal within, because if not, then you're carrying a lot. You're carrying this burden that will cause other issues. But you're right. You can forgive a person for hurting you or offending you, but then you just have to have some healthy boundaries for yourself, and also so that it doesn't happen again.
So one thought that I had earlier that I was going to ask you is, have you ever had a session in your whole career? Have you ever had a session that turned criminal or where you had to report someone about something?
No, the only thing is we need to file if there's any suicidal ideation, thoughts of self-harm or homicidal. I've never experienced that, but I've had to, together with my client in session, have them sent to a hospital. The ambulance came pick them up. So that we do. We always make that aware to all clients. If there's any thoughts of self-harm or other harms, we have to report. Nothing criminal. I don't know. And we do have to report, obviously, if something's going to happen or maybe even something has happened, but, there is a sense of privacy as well. And I don't know other clinicians who have, told me about that they had to file this person was up to, going to commit a crime.
Well, yeah. What would it be if someone said, 25 years ago, I killed someone?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that you'd have to report it.
That's a hard one,
right?
Yes. Or you would have to encourage them to report it, because if they're confessing, in session, there would have to be a reporting. Yeah, that's homicide, right?
Right. That's the thing. It's like, well, if it was long enough ago, but yeah, you would still report it. Like the Menendez brothers and that whole thing, where hadn't they told their therapist about it and they didn't say anything for the longest time?
Happened to the therapist. I think this was in California probably, right? Did anything happen? I'm assuming they must have had a little bit of a review of their licensure and board. Yeah.
I think that their license got revoked. I don't actually know 100%.
Serious, yeah. Homicide is homicide, past, present, or future. It's a no-no.
So I have a lot of moms that listen to my podcast, and we talk a lot about being mothers and a lot of new moms, but some more experienced ones. But I think that's something that we don't really talk about often is just mom guilt or having an understanding of the hormonal changes of having children. And I mean, what do you have to say towards someone struggling with mom guilt? Because you were saying about having children and you said something about like when we worry about our kids and they're a defiant child. I think something that we worry about, Ty and I worry about, is like, are we doing a good job as parents? And, you have this worry all the time that you want to be doing the best you can do. So, I mean, speak to that a little bit maybe about guilt as parents or worry as parents and what to do with that in a healthy way.
You love your children. You are there for their emotional needs, their physical needs, their schooling, they have a home, their spiritual needs. But sometimes kids could be a little frustrating. It is okay to
Mm-hmm.
love your kids and to be there for them, but also say, you know what? I need a little space from me as well. And mom should not feel guilty. And I'm glad women are finally talking about that. I love my husband. I love my kids. I love my family, but I'm a little overwhelmed sometimes because
Mm-hmm.
women who wear the mother hat are not given permission to say, hey, I'm a woman too. I'm not just wife and mother. I'm also a woman. And I need some time to myself to process for myself too and to take care of me. So I'm glad that women are addressing that right now. I like the word mom guilt, in terms of it. Probably it's being used right now, but there must have been a time that it was never used, right? Like moms are not supposed to feel guilty. Moms are supposed to be perfect. They have to serve. They have to do everything for others.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay for women to say, I love you all, but right now I have to take care of me. In other words, setting some boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Are you
And
encountering some friends who are experiencing that?
I think that there's definitely some friends of mine that struggle with having that mom guilt or just sort of, we chase these different, are we allowed to have our own hobbies, life outside of being mothers, which I'm a huge advocate for. I don't even know the word, but I definitely have always tried to pursue my own passions outside of, my own marriage, my having children. But for me, I mean, it's so hard too. I struggle with it too. So yeah, I think that it's something that you've helped me be able to recognize that it's okay for me to, and I should be proud. And also that I'm setting an example for my kids is something that you've helped me with, that my children can understand that, they can have their own life and passions outside of just having children one day, that I'm teaching Oakley that she can pursue her own passions one day, like with my acting and everything outside of being a mother. But I mean, I struggle with it all the time.
Mhm.
It's hard.
And like I'm hearing you say, you're giving permission to say you're not only going to be a mother, you will be a professional, you will be a wife, you will be a sister. There's different hats that, she's going to be wearing, and plus, like, also you're wearing as well. But it's okay to say, I love my family, but I also need to do something for myself because that's when you're going to be healthy. In addition, for women who invest everything in their children, it is my understanding that kids get older and sometimes they move on. And quite often these women have their midlife crisis. They come to see us and say, where is my identity? I invested everything in my family. I invested everything in my husband, and I don't know who I am right now. And we help them get back an identity or cultivate an identity.
Oh my gosh, that's so interesting too, because like we've got mom guilt because we're trying to have our own identity. We will have some mom guilt. Then we sometimes get so immersed that our only identity is being a mother that then when our kids leave the nest, we struggle with our identity then. It's funny. You've got both sides of that. And I think ultimately it's that we love the crap out of our kids and we want to do the best we can by them and for them.
But like you said earlier, it's great to also be a role model to your children that you're not just mom to them. They have to see you as a woman who has her passions and her desires and her interests.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. And that's something too with Oakley that I have such a good relationship with my mom. She is my best friend. I mean, her and Ty is like, if it wasn't for them, I would, those are my two people I talk to pretty much, and that's it. and you. No, but my mom's my best friend, and I want that so badly with Oakley. And so, I mean, what do you recommend? What do you recommend to make sure I have that same type of relationship dynamic?
See, there's no guarantee though, Haley. And it's great that you have a wonderful relationship with your mother and with your husband. There's a lot of security there. But it's your personality and your mother's personality that works well together. You have to allow it to morph with Oakley. You may have a fantastic relationship or you may have a good relationship, but it's different personalities though.
I know. And I mean, I think that we are growing in that, but she's 7. So we're a long ways from that.
You've built a beautiful foundation there, but it's probably not going to replicate the relationship you have with you and with your mother. It's going to be the relationship you're going to have with her.
Yes,
And if you have a foundation, it's wonderful.
Yes, we do have such a wonderful foundation, and And also, it's just the balance of she's still so little and I have to parent her, you know? I think that shift in our relationship with my mom and I, where we became, I mean, obviously, she's always my mom, and I was still parented my whole life. But I think that our relationship shifted to that friendship dynamic. It really grew when I was in middle school or so, you know?
Because
What do you think about?
your needs were different, right? At that time, were your needs different?
Yes, yes. What are your thoughts about? So that just reminded me that I'm really careful with my words because around Oakley, because my mom sort of, maybe it was some subliminal messaging, but my mom, when I was around middle school age, so many of my friends were becoming very defiant, fighting with their moms all the time. And something my mom would say to me is, I'm so glad that you and I have such a good relationship and that you don't fight me like that. And I think in a way it was reverse psychology, right? And so I think that I kind of already do say certain things with Oakley, like, gosh, I'm so grateful that you tell me everything. And I love that we have that kind of relationship, you know, because that's the relationship I want. So I think my question to you is, it's sort of manifesting, right? And I think, what are your thoughts about manifestation in life?
Well, because you're actually giving her positive regard. You're telling her, thank you for sharing everything with me. You're giving her something positive, and therefore she's going to think, well, I'm sharing everything with my mom. I'm going to continue. If there's negative, if you're giving negative feedback to the child, then they're going to quite often feel overwhelmed and say, why bother? I'm going to get negative feedback anyway. So it's that positive, regard or positive reinforcement. The same thing happens in therapy where, eventually clients could become very vulnerable with us and very honest. And sometimes they go to ugly places. I mean, we're not sitting saying, oh no, what are you telling me? We're like, thank you for telling us this, and I just want to let you know, let's work through it together. And when a client is making great choices, we also give them positive feedback as well.
Right. Yes, I am someone that's definitely a good responder to positive feedback. That was something early on in an acting class. And I know that maybe sounds silly because who wouldn't be? But early on in an acting class, it was a question that they had, what's the best way that you receive coaching? Do you just want a lot of positive encouragement? Do you want a lot of critical analysis? I mean, what do you want? And I think for me, I was like, I can't handle your major critiques. I just need positive encouragement. And if you don't have positive encouragement for me, silence is better than your critical analysis, So anyway, it's just funny that you say that because you do give me that positive re-encouragement in the things that I'm doing right. And I mean, maybe it's like we all have that sort of parental desire to be approved of,
To be approved of, to be loved, but also you can then give them some, lift a mirror also and say, well, you're growing in this way, but I want you to do better in the other way. And that's what we do also as therapists, saying, we see the work you've done, you've grown, but here there's a problem. Let's continue looking at it. Choosing our words very carefully in a very more positive and acceptable way.
So switching gears, I have a thought that's just come to me about dating. So I have a lot of friends that are single. A lot of female single friends. Ty has a lot of male single friends that often will come to us and, do you have someone to set me up with? We have set some people up. But what encouragement do you have for single people these days? It is so much different than when Ty and I met. I mean, the apps and everything these days, what are your thoughts on that? And what positive encouragement would you have for someone that is single? And do you think, back to manifestation, do you think that you can manifest your significant other?
Oh, I don't know about that one, but it's interesting you bring this up because my husband has actually written a book called God, Why Am I Still Single? It was his journey on finding his spouse. He really published a book a few years ago, and then COVID hit. So we didn't have the opportunity to go forward with it. It is, based on faith, on experiences, very intellectually written. So, and ultimately what he came to the conclusion is that we must wait on God's best plan. Yes, we can go out and date and be on dating sites and everything, but he's a believer, and so am I, that God has a best plan for those who are seeking a spouse, for those people. And you have to wait on God's best plan to bring in your spouse. So I would, reading that book also made me realize what a burden shift it is, because young people are thinking, oh, I've got to go find my spouse. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. And it's not working. Well, how about waiting on God? In addition to trying your best also to meet people, but bring
Right.
the Lord,
Not
because everything's
just, you can't sit on your hands and wait. The person's probably not going to knock on your front door and say, hey, let's go on a date that you haven't met. But having the trust that God has a plan and that he has a perfect person for you, and continuing to pursue
dating, and also to know that if you have such a strong desire, I'm assuming it's there from God, and God will provide. I'll just tell you one part of I remember reading in the book, there was a scene when he was praying to the Lord and he had given up, and he says, I'm never going to meet a spouse. I'm giving up. And he felt at that point that God said to him, nope, your spouse is coming. And he saw, as he was praying, he saw this vision of a broom coming down from heaven, and there was a massive line of women, and the broom was swept all the women. I think it was an infinite line of women standing there. The broom swept all the women away. And then God turned him around and he says, and here is your spouse. And truthfully, I believe we met a few days later. And this
oh my gosh,
flying by himself for such a long time. And he realized that he had to wait on God for God's promise and best plan. And it just alleviated this burden that he was a failure. He hadn't met anyone. And that's what I'm encouraging, individuals who are dating too. But in addition to, there's nothing wrong with going to gatherings or going on dates, even websites. Just do them, dating apps, just do them very carefully. There's nothing wrong with that. But not to feel like, oh, I'm a failure. I haven't met my spouse yet.
There's this problem that I notice with my single friends, that there's this bigger, better is next or something. Like, because they have the pick of all of these, they can swipe right on all these people. It's like, they might be on a date thinking about like, well, what if there's someone else out there? And Ty and I are always like, you have to give these people a chance. And I think that I think a lot of our single friends write people off on things that they say are red flags. You hear people say red flags when it's like, he doesn't cook. That's a red flag. And I'm like,
That's not a red flag. That should not be a red flag. How about he treats you well or she treats you well? They respect each other. They have good conversation, perhaps having the same faith. Yeah, that's like kind of micro, looking at situations from a very micro level. And that's not right. Some of these individuals might not be ready to be in a relationship. That's why they're picking on everything.
Right. And I think some of those red flags that you hear, or some of those, they're superficial in a way. Not that people are superficial. I'm saying these thoughts are very surface level thoughts. And I've told some of my girlfriends that are single, when they're kind of asking questions about my relationship with Ty, or they'll talk about a red flag in a guy, and I'm like, if that's a red flag, Ty had many red flags. I mean, you got to people are human, and you got to give them a chance. So
don't sweat the small stuff. That's right. Don't sweat the small stuff. Yeah. And also it speaks sometimes with individuals who are very focused on really the not relevant issues for a person. It could be an attachment issue, fear of really bonding. There's a desire there, but there's an actual fear of, bonding and becoming vulnerable and becoming one.
I feel there's a big issue of trust with everything is so much more public now. The fact that we have social media, everything feels so much more public, which I think makes everything feel like it has more weight to it and it can't be easy.
Mm-hmm. I'm in agreement with that. That's why I try to keep it very limited.
What do you think about, we have one of Ty's friends, his fear is getting cheated on, or if he gets himself into a relationship, he's like, see, this is why I don't want to get into a relationship, because I just heard of these friends, she cheated on him or something, and what are your thoughts about that? Because Ty and I are always like, well, you might encounter issues in your relationship. Obviously that would be horrible, and you want to try and make the good choices up front, that you don't choose someone that you feel you can't trust. I guess my thought is you have to open your heart, and you might get hurt.
Risk. You have to take the risk when it comes to love and marriage. That's correct.
Mm-hmm. And there is so much risk to it.
There is risk, because you're risking it all. You're risking, body, mind, soul, everything when you're bonding and attaching in a relationship. But this individual might have some trauma in his background as well. Did a parent abandoned? Did a parent do that to another parent? Was
Yeah. No, it's funny because I think this particular friend of ours he has a sort of a, I don't want to say unrealistic, but he has a very high standard because his parents have been married for 40 years. And I think that's amazing. He is a great eligible bachelor, but he's
Mhm.
afraid because he just doesn't want to risk the chance of getting hurt by a
So he's
girl.
struggling with perfection. In other words, he's got these
Yeah.
parents that he idealized in their marriage, and then he just wants to do it as perfect as possible, which is keeping him from actually bonding and being in a real human relationship, which is going to be good, but not perfect.
So I think there's a lot of, not this guy, but I think that there's a lot of too hot and heavy too fast. I think that
Yes.
so many people get together, they sleep together,
Mhm.
and then it fizzles out. What are your thoughts about waiting? I mean, do you recommend, like, what are your thoughts about, not everyone waits till marriage to have sex. What are your thoughts about relationships and dating now?
My thoughts?
And
Correct.
go
I
ahead.
do like it if clients or couples get to know each other in an emotional way, a spiritual way. And as per sex, this is my understanding with biblical sex. God wants us to wait until marriage because when you are having sex, you are joining a body, a spirit, and emotions. If the relationship doesn't work, it's a little bit painful, to say the least. It becomes very painful. So that's my understanding. That's why I encourage my young couples who are dating, perhaps you want to wait until marriage. However, it is their decision.
Hmm.
And quite often, most of them don't wait until marriage, but some of them do, which brings us to another issue too. Sexuality in Christianity doesn't really get talked about very often.
Hmm.
From what I have heard from my clients who have been raised as Christians, sex is bad, it's not good, it's dirty, but it's going to be wonderful on your wedding night. And what ends up happening for women and even for men, their bodies, it doesn't work because they're not familiar with their bodies and they're not able to perform sexually. I mean, I know of cases where couples weren't able to have sex for months. And then, of course, some of my clients, they come here and we address the issue and we help them get to that place because they have to shift, their thinking in one night. Go figure, right?
Right. Right. I mean, what pressure that is put on them. I think something that I heard once about that is the enemy will try so hard to get you in the bedroom together before your marriage and try so hard to tear you apart after your marriage. So trying
Wow,
to
that's
get you to have
beautiful.
sex
Mhm,
prior to marriage and trying
mhm,
to keep you from sex with each other after your
mhm,
marriage. And I see that
mhm,
in I've had some friends that waited until marriage, and I think that it was challenging for them as much as it was. And I've obviously seen people have sex before marriage, and
mhm,
we've had sex before marriage and had our fair share of challenges with it.
mhm,
And I
mhm.
think that it's just something that when you see it from a biblical sense, like you say, it is it's a thing that should be cherished, and you see it differently. I think, it isn't talked about really.
No,
It's
not really
very
discussed.
taboo.
Correct. When I was growing up, we had a psychologist called Dr. Ruth Westheimer. Have you even heard about her? I know you're very young. So she was
Uh-uh.
talking about sexuality, and she was actually quite famous. Perhaps I don't think I'm pretty sure she passed on, but she was on television and just saying that it's okay, people, to have sex. It's okay. She was talking about body functions and
Right.
the,
Dr. Ruth. She
the,
was on TV.
that's right. She was. She was.
When I tell you, my brothers and I would be like, let's watch Dr. Ruth.
I
Like
thought you were watching
it was
her.
I think it was Talk Sex with Dr. Ruth or something like that. Absolutely remember this, which we shouldn't have been watching. We were probably way too young. We were definitely way too young. I remember my brothers, because she would, like, every once in a while, she'd bring on some, like, sex toys
That's
and
right.
crazy
That's
stuff.
right. The
And it was like,
mechanical aaspect, right? So I think we need a
yes, which
Dr.
I'm
Ruth. We
sure.
need a Dr. Ruth today. But it is a beautiful part of the relationship, sex, intimacy. It's beautiful, but it has the right place, especially within the Christian context.
Well, that's interesting. I love hearing your take on dating today with single people and some of our single friends. And we know so many great people that are single, and I just so deeply for them want them to find their forever someone. But it's so hard, it's so hard. And like, what do you do in the waiting? What would be your recommendation for someone in the waiting period?
The waiting period, have community. Of course, first and foremost, keep praying to the Lord to bring you your person, and also keep dating, but date carefully. There's nothing wrong with dating, but just do it carefully. Do it without the expectation of like, this is my person. We met a week ago, this is my person. And sometimes when you take the pressure off the self, like I remember someone letting me know that they were looking for a spouse and they said, Lord, if I never find one, I have you. You are God. You are everything in my life. If I never find a spouse, it's okay. And then a week later, they met their spouse. Take the pressure off the self as well, especially for those of us who are believers. We know that, if we have that desire, God must have a plan for us.
That's so beautiful, because it is such a pressure that I think so many of my girlfriends that are single feel just, they feel the biological clock ticking type of thing. And I think that unnecessary pressure is such a huge aspect to why they might still be single, So taking that pressure off is, I think, very needed.
Correct. And having a full life despite not being married yet, not putting things on hold.
Right. Bringing your best self to a relationship. How can you expect to attract a girl that is loyal and Christian and wants to get married and have children? And, how can you expect that when maybe you're not bringing the role that you need to have in that relationship? So bringing your best self to it and understanding yourself, I think, is a huge aspect to it as well. Well, what else can I ask you? Is there anything that you feel like I haven't touched on that you feel would be important for people to know about therapy in general? And about you particularly?
Correct. I can only speak for myself, but I do have some colleagues as well. We genuinely love our clients. We love you all. We want the best for you all. And we are committed. We are clinically trained. We have theories. We are here to help you all heal and have the best life you want to have. So that's what I want to share about at least myself and what I see in my colleagues as well. We are committed to the whole process, and we're committed to helping individuals address anything they want to address, grieve, heal, process, make decisions. That's the way I see therapy. We're walking alongside a journey that our clients are taking, and we are big cheerleaders. It's a beautiful profession. It actually is a beautiful profession. And for those of us who are really committed to the process, we see amazing work with our clients. And we have joy. We have tremendous joy when there's a beautiful journey that takes place for an individual, a couple, or of a family. We really do feel joy within. But we give glory to God, to our clients, and then us.
Yes, you have helped me so much in my life in so many ways. And you have helped me to be happy for others, and you've helped me to just love myself truly. I think before I met you and before I went on my faith journey to know Jesus, I thought that I was this perfect person. And I have learned that I am completely imperfect, but that I am, valuable. And you've just helped me so much to have confidence. I think that that's something that therapy has done for me as a whole, is just, it's given me so much confidence in who I am, so that I can be filled up and then go and pour that love out onto others. So I think if anybody wanted to seek therapy, they should just give it a shot, and that anyone could really, truly benefit from it.
Absolutely. And I have said this before as well. I have seen the growth in you. And if anything, you have also developed more of a deeper relationship with God, who is the ultimate healer. He's our ultimate healer.
So true. So true. You've always pointed me towards God as well, and that's been really valuable to me. So thank you so much for coming on and doing this. This has been very different and cool, and I think that people will really love it. I think people will be, if anything, they'll have learned a little bit about therapy and getting into it, and I really appreciate your time.
You are so welcome, and I want to thank you so much for having me on, and I'm extremely proud of you, young lady.
Oh, thank you so much. It never hurts to hear. I love it.
Everything.
And that's a wrap on today's episode. I'm so grateful you spent this time with us. It means the world that you're here. And if you loved this conversation, make sure you check out the show notes for all the links and any resources we mentioned. I would love it if you followed me over on Instagram and YouTube. This is where I like to share things about my life, little tidbits about our family. And hey, if you enjoyed this episode, the best way to say thank you is by sharing with a friend, leaving a review, and rating the show. It helps this conversation reach more people who believe in the good. See you next week.